All right, tonight, the Italian story here in Europe. Joining me now from Brussels is Elly Schlein. She is an Italian member of the European Parliament for the left-wing Possibile Party. Up until last year, she was a member of Prime Minister Matteo Renzi's governing Democratic Party. Ms. Schlein, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the day. Did you vote against the referendum?
Sure, and I campaigned with all my party for actually 2 years now. We've been fighting this reform because it was a very bad reform, according to us. It would have, in a way, shifted a lot of power towards the ruling party. It would have taken away the right of the citizen to select their own representative in the Senate, and it would have also dramatically diminished the competences of the region. So our reason to vote against were all based on the text, not so much on the political context, but I recognize, and you said that already, that it became, because of the will of Renzi himself, it became a referendum on himself and his government.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, I mean, you as a politician, you know what the referendum was about. Do you really believe, though, that the voters, that when they went into the polling booths on Sunday, were they thinking about the clauses and conditions of this reform? I mean, they were just angry, right? They wanted to protest.
I would say it's half and half. The interesting thing is that the turnout was really impressive, and particularly it's impressive to see the younger people from 18 to 34 to reject at 81% the reform. So it's very hard to tell how much it was really on. They came out to vote after not coming out to vote in the last political and European election. They came out partly to defend the constitution and partly to say no to Renzi's arrogance and to a government that has pushed many reforms without, let me remind what happened, without a clear mandate, because Renzi never received a mandate to do the lot of reform that he did.
Well, how much democracy is there right now in Italy? I mean, you've had 40 governments in the country since 1945. And the reform that Mr. Renzi, was banking on was a way to, as we understand it, was a way to try to modernize the Constitution and to provide some stability. Would you disagree with that radical change is needed?
No, radical change in my country is needed, and I regret that the Prime Minister has lost a lot of months for the country on this constitutional referendum instead of addressing the real problems, like, for example, corruption, like, for example, tax evasion and avoidance, the lack of investment, and the rising inequalities that took part in this vote, clearly. The problem is that they have used as a scapegoat the constitutional architecture when the problem is much more of the political system. Let me give you an example. We are the second country in Europe for the number of laws that we produce every year. It's not a matter, we didn't have a problem of speed or quantity of production of laws. I would say we have too many. We should be able to make better laws.
Okay.
So what they tried to do was system in which the ruling party had all the powers for himself. It would have really impacted negatively the checks and balances in the constitution.
Would you say, I mean, consider that yesterday, for example, the Italian Coast Guard again rescued hundreds of refugees in the Mediterranean off the coast of Italy. Would you say that the no vote yesterday was also a vote of complaining and protesting the European Union's policy on dealing with this crisis?
No, I would say that it has been read internationally by some media, for example, as a vote against Europe. It was not that. It was not part of the debate. Of course, in the front supporting the no, there was also the extreme right. There was also Beppe Grillo's Five-Star Movement, and we know their position on both migration and Europe. But the 60% of Italian voters who voted against have not become supporters of these two parties. The left was also against. Young people, unemployed people were against. But migration and Europe were definitely not part of the debate here.
Okay.
It was much more
Oh,
Yeah, you can
excuse
imagine
me.
that the union was also against the reform, and also the association of partisans who freed the country from fascism many years ago. So it was not a populistic vote, I think. It was in part a vote of anger, of course, against the government and its policies, but not against the European Union and against migration, I would say.
Let me play for you what a member of Mr. Renzi's party said today when she was asked who should replace him as prime minister. Take a listen. Forza Italia.
Silvio Berlusconi, of course. The victory of the no in this referendum has also been a personal victory of Silvio Berlusconi, because in maybe more than 10 days he was able to gain a lot of consensus for the no. So I think that when Silvio Berlusconi thinks about a successor to himself, he may easily think about himself.
Ms. Bergamini, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, I misspoke there. That was obviously Berlusconi's party, not Mr. Renzi's party. But, I mean, what is happening in your country when you have people saying that we should return to Berlusconi?
Well, actually, it's not a good news. But let me say, if we look at the polls yesterday about the intentions of the vote in the next political election, yesterday still the party of Berlusconi was about at 10 to 12%. Also, the Northern League of Salvini, 10 to 12%, and the Five-Star Movement, 30%. They have not changed during this campaign. So what I'm trying to say here is that the 60% is not as a result of the growing of the big political supporters. We should try to read the data, and we have been doing this for the whole day, by dividing it from a vote for the parties. It was not much that. If you consider that the turnout was 67%, it was 10 points more than the last European election. In my region, the double of the people went out to vote. So it is not much about the growing of the existing parties.
Okay.
It was much about people coming out to express themselves on the constitution and on Renzi's government. That's what I think.
Do you think, let's say we do have elections next year. Let's say that this caretaker government can last until then. A lot of people say we've got the perfect storm here for the Eurosceptics. We would have national elections in Italy, we'd have national elections in France, and here in Germany. I mean, do you see the European project or the Eurozone seriously threatened now because of what Italy decided yesterday?
No, I don't think it is posing actually a threat. I mean, we are in a context of rising of Eurosceptic forces, and that's something that is very worrying, and it's going on all across Europe for sure. But I don't think that the vote, as I said, the vote of yesterday was not against the European Union. Our country has a problem now because it was one of the funders, and it was very pro-European, and that has changed through the time. But I don't think that we will have a problem in that sense. I mean, It's much more, how would you say? It's much more a vote on the government and on the constitutional change than something that we can put in another context. But for now, I think that the same majority that was at the government will form a new technical government to build a new electoral law and then go and bring the vote next year.
Okay.
We will see who wins.
Ms. Schlein, we're going to have to wrap it up there. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Elly Schlein, an Italian member of the European Parliament, talking about that referendum result in Italy yesterday. Ms. Schlein, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.